There's a moment most people never talk about. It happens when your life looks fine on the outside, maybe even good, but something inside you feels like it's coming apart at the seams. You can't explain it. You can't point to one thing that's wrong. You just know that whatever held you together before isn't holding anymore. And if that's where you are right now, I need you to hear something. You are not falling apart. Something inside you is falling away. There's a difference, a big one. See, we spend most of our lives building identities, building routines, building walls around the parts of ourselves we decided weren't acceptable somewhere along the way. By the time you're 25 or 30, you've constructed this entire architecture of who you think you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to talk, what you're supposed to want, which emotions are allowed, and which ones get shoved into a drawer and locked. And that architecture works for a while. It gets you through school, through jobs, through relationships. It keeps things neat, predictable, safe. But here's what nobody warns you about. The version of you that built all of that, they were working with incomplete information. They were a child or a teenager or a young adult just trying to survive their environment. They made the best choices they could with what they had. But those choices were never meant to be permanent. So what happens when the real you starts outgrowing the container the old you built? It breaks. That's the part that terrifies people, the breaking. Because from the inside, it doesn't feel like growth. It feels like failure. It feels like something is deeply, fundamentally wrong with you. Your motivation disappears. Things that used to excite you feel hollow. Relationships that once felt solid start to irritate you in ways you can't articulate. You look in the mirror and the person staring back feels like a stranger wearing your face. And the world around you, the people in your life, they'll have opinions about this. They'll tell you you're going through a phase. They'll say you're being dramatic. They'll suggest medication or a vacation or a new hobby, because from the outside, it looks like you're breaking down. It looks like you need to be fixed, but you don't need to be fixed. You need to be released. Think about a snake shedding its skin. Right before the shed, the snake goes partially blind. Its eyes cloud over. It becomes irritable, withdrawn, vulnerable. If you didn't know what was happening, you'd think the snake was sick, dying even. But it's not dying. It's doing the most natural thing in the world. It's outgrowing what no longer fits. That's you right now. The anxiety you're feeling, that's the friction between who you've been pretending to be and who you actually are. The exhaustion isn't because you're doing too much. It's because you're spending enormous energy maintaining a version of yourself that your soul has already moved past. You're running software that your system no longer supports and wondering why everything keeps crashing. Let me tell you what this process actually looks like, because it helps to know you're not alone in it and you're not crazy. First, there's the withdrawal. You pull back from people, from noise, from the constant input of the world. Not because you're depressed, although it can look that way, but because your system is trying to hear something quiet, something that gets drowned out by all the performing and people-pleasing and staying busy. You need silence the same way a caterpillar needs the darkness of a cocoon. The transformation can't happen in the spotlight. Then comes the confusion. The things you were certain about become uncertain. Your career, your beliefs, your relationships, your identity, all of it goes into a kind of fog. And this is terrifying because we're taught that knowing who you are is the baseline. Losing that feels like losing everything. But what if who you thought you were was never the full picture? What if the confusion isn't you losing your mind, but your mind finally letting go of a story that was too small for you? After that, the emotions come. And not the polite, manageable ones. The deep stuff. Grief you didn't know you were carrying. Anger that doesn't seem connected to anything specific. A sadness that sits in your chest like something heavy and ancient. These aren't signs of weakness. They're the old version of you saying goodbye. They're the emotional weight you've been carrying since you were 7 or 12 or 19, finally being allowed to leave your body. And then, slowly, something else starts to emerge. It's quiet at first. A new kind of knowing. A sense of what actually matters to you versus what you were told should matter. You start making choices that don't make sense to the people around you, but make perfect sense to something deep inside your chest. You set boundaries that feel foreign coming out of your mouth. You walk away from things you once would have clung to, not with anger, with a strange, calm clarity. That's the real you, arriving. Here's the part that's hard to accept. This process isn't optional. I mean, it is, technically. You can fight it. You can stuff everything back down, medicate the symptoms, distract yourself into numbness, and go back to performing the old version. People do it every day. But it costs you. It costs you in ways that show up slowly in your health, in your relationships, in that quiet desperation you feel at 3 a.m. when the distractions stop working. The people who change, who actually transform their lives in ways that feel real and lasting, they're not the ones who avoided the breakdown. They're the ones who let it happen, who stopped resisting the destruction long enough to see what was trying to be born in the middle of it. There's an old idea, and I'm paraphrasing here, that the wound is the place where the light enters, not around the wound, not after the wound heals, through it, directly through the thing that hurts the most. That's the entry point. That's where the new version of you is trying to break through. So if you're in that dark place right now, if everything feels uncertain and heavy and confusing, I want you to consider something that might sound counterintuitive. What if this is the most important thing that's ever happened to you? What if 10 years from now, you look back at this exact period, this stretch of days where nothing made sense and everything hurt, and you recognize it as the turning point? The moment where you stopped living someone else's life and started living your own? You're not breaking down, you're breaking open. And what's inside you, the version of you that's been buried under decades of conditioning and fear and other people's expectations, it's ready. It's been ready. It's just been waiting for you to stop holding everything together long enough to let it out. So let it out. The world doesn't need another person performing stability they don't feel. It needs people who've walked through their own fire and came back with something real in their eyes. That could be you. Sit with that for a second.